The first thing that breaks is the sky. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. It actually breaks like glass stressed too far, cracking along invisible fault lines no one knew were there. New York City is used to disasters. It markets them. It sells them back to itself as trauma-branded heroism. But this is different. There's no warning siren, no Vought press release pre-written for damage control. One moment the clouds hang low and gray, pregnant with another meaningless storm. The next, the air itself screams. People look up, and something looks back. It isn't a ship. It isn't a portal in the sci-fi sense. It's absence, a pressure, a silence so heavy it presses thoughts flat. Birds drop out of the sky mid-flight. Windows shatter inward, not outward, as if the city is inhaling against its will. Somewhere in Midtown, a soup freezes mid-pose, smile still rehearsed, confidence still borrowed, as the hairs on his arms stand straight up for the first time in his engineered life. High above the city, reclining in the void like it's a throne built just for him, floats a being who looks bored. Beerus, god of destruction, yawns. His ears flick, annoyed, as if the universe itself has interrupted his nap. He doesn't know where he is yet. He doesn't care. All universes taste roughly the same when you're old enough. What he does notice, what irritates him, is the noise. The frantic psychic buzz of millions of minds layered on top of each other. Fear, ego, hunger, worship. Lies stacked so thick they hum. Disgusting, he mutters. Below him, the boy's universe continues pretending it understands power. Homelander feels it first. Not fear, he doesn't do fear, but something close enough to register as insult. His smile falters during a live broadcast. His eyes drift upward, unfocused, searching for the thing that just reminded his body that it isn't the apex predator it was promised to be. For the first time since he was grown in a lab, Homelander feels small, not weaker, smaller. Like a child who just realized the room has a ceiling, and above that ceiling is something waiting. Vought scrambles. Satellites go dark one by one, fried by energy they can't quantify. Analysts shout over each other, throwing around words like extraterrestrial and unknown soup classification, because their entire worldview depends on the lie that everything powerful can be categorized, monetized, and owned. Somewhere deep in a reinforced boardroom, a man whispers the word God and immediately regrets it. Because gods aren't supposed to be real. Beerus drifts lower, purple tail swaying lazily, eyes half-lidded. He tastes the atmosphere, the planet's Kai, or what passes for it here. Thin, weak, polluted by artificial enhancement and ego-driven violence. A universe without balance, without restraint. No Kais, no cosmic custodians. Just a single species playing dress-up with forces it doesn't understand and calling it heroism. He smiles. That's when the first building disappears. Not explodes, not collapses. It simply ceases to exist. One moment it's there, steel and glass and screaming people inside. The next it's gone, erased so completely the air rushes in to fill the whole reality left behind. The shockwave levels 3 city blocks. Phones capture it from 100 angles. The footage goes viral before the dust even settles. Beerus sighs again. Ah, that felt better. Far below, Billy Butcher watches the skyline bleed smoke and light, and mutters a single word under his breath. Bugger. Because whatever this thing is, it isn't a soup. And if it isn't a soup, that means everything they've been fighting, the lies, the monsters, the corporations, was just the shallow end of a much deeper, darker pool. And Beerus hasn't even noticed them yet. In a world built on manufactured gods, on heroes sold like products and morality shaped by marketing, something ancient has arrived that cannot be bought, threatened, or reasoned with. This is not a savior descending from the heavens. This is a judge who never asked to be worshipped and never cared to be understood. If you've ever wondered what happens when absolute power collides with a universe that mistakes celebrity for divinity, if you've ever questioned whether justice can exist in a world where strength is owned by corporations and fear is a business model, then stay here. Stay with this story. Because what follows is not a battle of fists alone. It's a collision of philosophies, of hunger versus control, of destruction that serves balance versus violence that serves ego. And somewhere between a bored god and a terrified planet, lines will be crossed that cannot be uncrossed. This is not about who wins. It's about what survives. The city doesn't understand what's happening, only that it's happening too fast. Emergency broadcasts overlap each other, voices cracking through static as anchors desperately try to name the impossible without sounding afraid. Helicopters circle at unsafe distances, their pilots sweating through flight suits as instruments scream warnings that make no sense. On the streets, people run without direction, clutching phones, children, shopping bags, anything that anchors them to the idea that this is still a normal day spiraling slightly out of control, not the opening seconds of something terminal. High above all of it, Beerus floats in absolute stillness. From his perspective, the planet is loud in an uninteresting way. Panic ripples outward like heat distortion, messy and inefficient. He's seen civilizations collapse with more dignity. Entire star systems have faced judgment without this much noise. His tail flicks again, irritation sharpening into mild curiosity. Something here feels wrong, not dangerous, just malformed, like a structure built without understanding load-bearing limits. He closes his eyes for a moment and listens, not with ears but with awareness. Artificial strength, artificial courage, artificial gods. When he opens his eyes, they glow faintly, and several more satellites die. Inside Vought Tower, the Situation Room is chaos dressed in glass and steel. Screens flash red warnings, analysts shout figures that contradict each other, and someone is already preparing a statement blaming foreign powers. Stan Edgar sits at the head of the table, hands folded, face calm in a way that borders on unsettling. He has built empires on lies stronger than most truths. But this isn't something you spin. What do we know? He asks quietly. No one answers immediately. That alone is enough to sour the room. Finally, a woman from R&D clears her throat. It's not reading like a soup, no compound V signature, no known energy spectrum. It's self-contained, as if reality is bending around it rather than reacting to it. Edgar's eyes lift, meaning. Meaning it's not adapting to us, she says. We're adapting to it. That's when the feed switches. A live aerial shot shows Beerus descending, slow and unhurried, toward the remains of the erased building. Dust still hangs in the air, glittering in sunlight like the aftermath of a bomb that never exploded. Firefighters freeze mid-step. Soldiers raise rifles that feel suddenly childish in their hands. Beerus lands lightly, feet touching broken asphalt without sound. He looks around. His gaze passes over screaming civilians, emergency vehicles, shattered storefronts. He feels no malice, no satisfaction, just evaluation. This place is sick, overfed on violence, starving for balance. He crouches and touches the ground with 2 fingers. The street cracks for miles. Pathetic, he murmurs. Several blocks away, Billy Butcher lowers his binoculars slowly. Huey stands beside him, pale, mouth slightly open. That thing just broke the road, Huey whispers, like it was paper. Butcher lights a cigarette with shaking hands and immediately crushes it out. Yeah, I noticed. Mother's Milk speaks next, voice tight. That ain't a soup, not even close. No, Butcher agrees. That's a bloody god. The word hangs there, heavy and unwelcome. Across the city, in a polished penthouse overlooking the chaos, Homelander watches the same feed. He smiles at first, reflexively, because that's what he's trained to do when cameras are rolling and fear needs a face. But the smile doesn't stick. His heartbeat has picked up. He can feel it. His hands clench at his sides. The thing on the screen hasn't looked at him yet. That bothers him more than the destruction. He lifts off without announcing it, shattering the windows as he rockets toward the scene. Wind howls past him, familiar and comforting. He's fast. He's strong. He's the apex. That's what the world says. That's what he says. Beerus hears him coming long before he arrives. The air ripples as Homelander lands hard across the street, cape billowing, boots cracking pavement. Cameras pivot instantly. The narrative tries to reassert itself. "Hey," Homelander calls out, voice amplified, confident. "You're causing a lot of trouble." Beerus looks up slowly. Their eyes meet. For the first time in his life, Homelander feels something slip. Not fear, not yet, but resistance, like pushing against something immovable and realizing your muscles were never tested properly before. "You're loud," Beerus says, "and small." The words hit harder than any punch. Homelander laughs, sharp and brittle. "Buddy, I don't know where you crawled out of, but this is my city." Beerus tilts his head, studying him like an insect that learned how to speak. "Is it?" Homelander lunges. It's not a decision. It's instinct. Violence has always worked. His fist crosses the distance faster than sound, powerful enough to pulp tanks, to shatter mountains. The cameras barely catch the motion. Beerus yawns. Two fingers snap shut around Homelander's wrist. The shockwave alone flattens nearby cars. Homelander's arm stops dead, his momentum annihilated as if physics itself has been vetoed. He pulls. He strains. Veins stand out in his neck. "Nothing." Beerus looks almost disappointed. "Oh," he says softly, "you thought you mattered." He flicks his wrist. Homelander crashes through 3 buildings before skidding across the street in a cloud of rubble and blood. His cape tears. His suit cracks. Bones knit back together slowly, painfully. Cameras go silent as operators scramble, unsure whether to keep filming or run. Beerus doesn't pursue. He turns away, already bored again. Around the world, something fundamental breaks. The strongest symbol of manufactured divinity just fell, not defeated in a grand battle, not overwhelmed by strategy, simply dismissed. In the smoke, Homelander drags himself upright, eyes wide, breath ragged. Rage floods in to replace the void where certainty used to live. He screams, unleashing heat vision that carves a molten scar across the street. Beerus doesn't even turn. The beam stops inches from his back, dispersing into harmless light. Beerus sighs, long and weary. Enough. He raises one finger. The pressure drops like a guillotine. Homelander slams into the ground, pinned by invisible force, bones creaking, lungs collapsing. He can't move, can't scream, can't breathe properly. The world watches its god choke on air. Beerus finally looks back. "This universe," he says calmly, "has forgotten humility." The silence that follows is absolute. And somewhere deep in the cosmic distance, something older than Vought, older than humanity's lies, begins to pay attention. The pressure lifts without warning. Homelander collapses forward, gasping like a drowning man dragged back to shore too late to feel relief. He claws at the pavement, fingers digging into cracks he didn't know he could feel, lungs burning as if air itself has become hostile. Cameras catch everything. There is no heroic framing, no triumphant music, just a God-shaped man on his knees, coughing blood into a city that no longer believes in him. Beerus watches for a moment longer, eyes unreadable. Then he turns away. That hurts more than the impact. The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't scream. They don't even run. They stand frozen, staring at the thing that rewrote their understanding of strength in less than 10 seconds. Somewhere a child starts crying, sharp and thin, the sound cutting through the stillness like a blade. In Vought Tower, someone vomits into a trash can. "Cut the feed," a voice shouts. "No," Stan Edgar says calmly, "leave it." The room turns toward him. "This isn't a crisis," Edgar continues. "This is a recalibration. The public is watching something larger than us. That means we adapt or we become irrelevant. But Homelander, someone starts, is alive, Edgar says, which means we still have leverage for now. On the streets, the boys move. Butcher doesn't wait for discussion. He's already walking, coat flapping behind him, jaw set so tight it looks like it might crack. Huey follows, heart hammering, eyes darting between Beerus and Homelander like he's watching two natural disasters deciding which direction to move next. "This is insane," Huey whispers. "That thing just handled him." "Yeah," Butcher mutters, "and notice how it didn't finish the job." Frowns. "You think that matters?" "It always matters," Butcher says. "Means it's got rules or standards or it's bored. None of those are good." Behind them, Frenchie laughs once, sharp and hysterical. "Mon Dieu, I have built bombs that did more damage emotionally than that." Beerus strolls through the wreckage like it's a garden path. Emergency responders instinctively part around him, unable to decide whether helping people or avoiding him is the higher priority. He steps over a crushed ambulance without looking down. He pauses. A woman is trapped under debris nearby, leg pinned, bleeding heavily. Her eyes meet his. There's no worship there, no pleading, just shock and pain and the raw animal will to survive. Beerus studies her. He could erase the debris. He could erase her. He could erase the entire city again just to quiet the noise in his head. Instead, he exhales. With a flick of his finger, the rubble disintegrates into harmless dust. The woman screams as pressure releases, then sobs when she realizes she's still alive. Paramedics rush in, stunned, afraid to thank him. Beerus is already walking away. "Interesting," he murmurs. "This universe still produces sparks." High above, Wise watches silently, staff glowing faintly. He hasn't intervened. He rarely does, but even his smile has faded. Something about this place unsettles him, not its weakness but its distortion. Power without purpose, violence without balance. "Careful, Lord Beerus," Wise says gently. "You're becoming involved." Beerus scoffs. "Hardly, I'm just irritated." "Of course," Wise replies. Homelander finally manages to stand. His posture is wrong, shoulders hunched, head lowered. Blood streaks his chin. He feels eyes on him from every direction, and for once they don't feel admiring. They feel measuring. He lifts off suddenly, fleeing upward in a sonic crack that shatters nearby windows again. Retreat framed as repositioning. Pride salvaged through altitude. The cameras follow him until he's just a speck, then snap back to Beerus. Social media detonates. Clips loop endlessly. Memes form faster than trauma counselors can schedule sessions. The narrative fractures into camps. Those who deny what they saw, those who worship it, those who beg it to leave, and those who quietly realize that gods don't ask permission. In a secure bunker miles away, a general stares at a paused frame of Beerus stopping Homelander's punch. "We can't fight that," he says. Silence answers him. "We can't nuke that," someone finally admits. The room sinks into something heavier than fear. Back on the street, Butcher lights a cigarette, hands steady now. He exhales slowly, watching Beerus disappear into the distance like a walking extinction event. "Well," he says, "that settles it." Huey swallows. "Settles what?" "We're not the biggest bastards in the room anymore." That night, Beerus sits on the edge of a skyscraper, legs dangling, city lights flickering beneath him like a broken constellation. He eats from a small bowl Wise produced out of thin air, chewing thoughtfully. "This planet is inefficient," Beerus says. "Too many false kings, too much wasted suffering." Wise hums, "You could destroy it." "I could," Beerus agrees, "but then I'd be bored again." Below them, sirens wail, fires burn, life continues in defiance of terror. Beerus smiles faintly. "Let's see how long they last." Far away, in a sterile room reinforced with more steel than sense, Homelander sits alone, Doctors hover at a distance. No one touches him without permission anymore. His hands shake. He clenches them into fists until the tremor stops. He stares at the wall, replaying the moment over and over. The grip, the dismissal, the effortless cruelty of indifference. For the first time, he understands something terrifying. There is a hierarchy, and he is not at the top. He smiles slowly, dangerously. If it bleeds, he whispers, I can kill it. Outside, the universe shifts, subtle and irreversible, as Beerus's presence settles like a verdict that hasn't been read aloud yet. Balance has noticed imbalance, and judgment has only just begun. The world doesn't end that night. That's the cruelest part. Morning comes anyway. Sunlight spills over shattered streets, glinting off broken glass and scorched asphalt as if nothing fundamental has changed. People wake up, check their phones, replay the same clips again and again, each viewing stripping away a little more denial. Homelander falling to his knees. Beerus stopping him with 2 fingers, the pause afterward. The way power looked small. Vought goes into overdrive. Press releases flood every channel before breakfast. Carefully chosen words. Unprecedented encounter. External anomaly. Homelander strategically disengaged to prevent civilian casualties. The lies are polished, rehearsed, desperate, but they don't land the way they used to. Something cracked on that street and it wasn't concrete. People saw fear in Homelander's eyes. That image doesn't wash off. In a private boardroom deep inside Vought Tower, Stan Edgar listens as executives talk themselves in circles. Charts, projections, damage control timelines. None of it matters. What do we know? Edgar asks calmly. A woman clears her throat. He doesn't register as a soup. No compound V signature. No known energy spectrum. He appeared, overpowered Homelander without visible exertion and left. And motive? Silence. That, Edgar continues, is the most dangerous variable of all. Elsewhere, Homelander watches the same footage alone, again and again. He pauses on the moment Beerus looks away from him, bored, not impressed, not threatened. Discarding him. Homelander's jaw tightens until his teeth ache. Rage wants to surge, but it can't find traction. Every instinct he's built his identity on, fear, dominance, spectacle, failed him. For the first time, violence didn't solve the problem. It exposed him. He grips the armrest hard enough to crack it. They laughed, he whispers. The laughter isn't loud, not yet, but he can feel it coming. Memes, parodies, questions, the kind that never stop once they start. He stands abruptly, packing, breath shallow. I just need to understand it, he tells himself. Everything has a weakness. Across the city, the boys regroup in their hideout, tension coiled tight. Screens glow with non-stop coverage. Huey rubs his eyes, exhausted. So what now? He asks. That thing could wipe out Vought, Homelander, all of it, and it just didn't. That's the point, MM says. Power like that doesn't need to prove itself. Butcher leans against the table, cigarette burning untouched between his fingers. Nah, it's worse. He's choosing. Frenchie nods slowly. Like a cat, plays with the mouse before deciding whether it's worth the effort. Kimiko signs sharply. Frenchie translates, voice quieter. She says that kind of power changes the rules for everyone. Heroes, villains, us. No one argues. Above them on a rooftop, no one is watching. Beerus eats again. Different food this time. Street food Wise insisted on trying. Beerus chews, unimpressed. This planet overcompensates, he says. So much noise around such fragile beings. Wise smiles faintly. And yet you spared several of them. Beerus snorts, don't read into it. I wouldn't dare. They watch a police convoy crawl below, lights flashing. Soldiers set up barricades that would be laughable if they weren't so earnest. Beerus's eyes narrow, not with anger but with curiosity. They're preparing, he notes. Of course, Wise replies. Fear accelerates creativity. Beerus leans back, tail flicking. Good, let's see what they come up with. In a government facility buried under layers of secrecy, a different kind of meeting takes place. No branding, no smiles, just uniforms and fear carefully disguised as authority. We cannot engage directly, a general says, but we can provoke observation. If it reacts, we learn. And if it does, someone asks. The room goes quiet. Then, the general says slowly, we learn that we are irrelevant. By evening, the city changes its posture. Armed patrols double. Sups are quietly pulled from public appearances. Vought cancels events out of respect. Fear trickles downward, invisible but contagious. Beerus feels it. He stands stretching, yawning as if waking from a nap. They're circling, he says, like they think caution is strategy. Wise taps his staff lightly. Careful, you're beginning to sound disappointed. Beerus smiles, I am. He steps off the rooftop and doesn't fall. Below, Homelander lifts into the sky again, this time alone, rage burning through restraint. He scans the city, searching, listening, desperate for the presence he hates more than anything. Show yourself, he mutters. Far above him, Beerus opens one eye. Oh, he says softly, you're still here. The air between them tightens, charged not with impact but with intent. Somewhere in the city, Butcher feels it in his bones. Brace yourselves, he mutters. Round two's coming, and this time someone's gonna make a mistake. The sky darkens, not with clouds but with consequence. The first missile launches without ceremony. No dramatic countdown, no speech, just a quiet authorization buried under layers of bureaucracy, fear disguised as resolve. Somewhere far from the city, a finger presses a button, and a weapon built to end wars tears free from its cradle and screams toward the sky. Beerus notices before the alarms do. He feels it as a ripple, like a stone dropped into still water. His ears flick. Wise pauses mid-sip, tea hovering inches from his lips. Oh, Wise says pleasantly, that's new. Below them, the missile climbs fast, trailing fire, cutting a white scar through the air. Radar operators track it with shaking hands, breath held tight, as if watching long enough might make it succeed. Homelander sees it too. For half a second, relief flares in his chest, not because he believes it will work, but because someone else is acting. Someone else is taking responsibility. If it fails, it won't be his failure alone. About damn time, he mutters, hovering in place. The missile detonates close enough that the shockwave rolls through the clouds like thunder. A blinding bloom of light erupts, violent and absolute, a sun born for a fraction of a second. Cameras shake, feeds cut, static floods the airwaves. Then the light fades. Beerus stands exactly where he was. Smoke curls lazily around him, dispersing as if embarrassed by its own presence. His clothes are untouched. His expression is annoyed. He exhales slowly. That, he says, was rude. On the ground, jaws drop in unison. Someone in the command center whispers a prayer they don't believe in anymore. Another officer just stares, hollow-eyed, as decades of military doctrine evaporate in a heartbeat. Homelander feels it then. Not triumph, not validation. Something colder. Fear sharp and personal. Beerus descends, not quickly, not dramatically. Just a casual drift downward, as if gravity itself has decided to be polite. He stops in midair, level with Homelander, close enough now that the hero can see his eyes clearly. There is no malice in them. That terrifies him more than rage ever could. You humans, Beerus says, voice calm, almost conversational. You escalate without understanding what escalation means. Homelander clenches his fists. You think you're better than us. Beerus tilts his head. No, I think you're louder. The insult lands harder than any punch. Homelander snaps. He surges forward, heat vision flaring, strength unleashed without restraint. The air screams as he moves, a living weapon fueled by ego and desperation. This time there's no hesitation, no calculation, just fury. Beerus doesn't move. The punch lands. Or rather, it stops. Homelander's fist meets Beerus's palm and goes no further. The impact sends a shockwave ripping outward, shattering windows for blocks, flipping cars, knocking people off their feet. But Beerus himself doesn't budge an inch. He looks down at Homelander's hand, still pressed uselessly against him. "Ah," Beerus says thoughtfully, "there it is, pride." He flicks his wrist. Homelander is gone. Not thrown, removed. One moment he's there, the next he's a streak of red and blue slamming through a building half a mile away, concrete exploding outward like paper. He crashes through floors, walls, history, until he finally skids to a stop in the ruins of an abandoned mall. He doesn't get up right away. His ears ring, his vision swims, blood trickles from his mouth. He laughs. A broken, disbelieving sound. That's not possible. Above the city, Beerus exhales again, visibly restraining himself. Wise floats beside him. "You promised yourself you wouldn't overreact." "I didn't," Beerus replies. "I barely reacted at all." On the ground, panic metastasizes. Sups scatter. Police retreat. Civilians run, not away from Beerus specifically, but away from the idea that anything they trusted to protect them ever could. Vought's channels go dark. Inside their hideout, the boys watch the feed die in real time. "Well," Huey says faintly, "that answers the 'can we fight it' question." Shakes his head. "This isn't a fight, this is weather." Butcher says nothing. He's staring at the blank screen, jaw tight, eyes sharp with a realization he doesn't like. "He's not here to conquer," Butcher finally says. "If he wanted that tower gone, it'd already be dust." "Then what?" Huey asks. Butcher exhales smoke slowly. "Then we're entertainment." Back in the wrecked mall, Homelander staggers to his feet. His cape is torn, his uniform scorched. The mirror of himself in a shattered storefront barely looks like a hero. He lifts off again, slower this time, less certain. Beerus watches him approach, curiosity returning. "You're persistent," Beerus admits. "I'll give you that." Homelander's voice cracks when he speaks. "What do you want?" The question hangs there, raw and unguarded. Beerus considers him for a long moment. "I want quiet," he says finally. "I want to eat without being interrupted, and I want you to stop pretending you're something you're not." Homelander's eyes narrow. "And if I do?" Beerus's gaze hardens, not with anger but with inevitability. "Then you'll force me to decide whether this planet is worth the inconvenience." Silence spreads outward, heavy and suffocating. Far away, in that hidden government facility, someone slams a fist on the table. "We can't just let this happen." A scientist looks up pale. "If we push again, we may not get a third chance." Above the city, Beerus turns slightly, sensing the gears turning, the fear calcifying into resolve. He sighs. "So predictable." Wise smiles gently. "Careful, you're beginning to sound disappointed again." Beerus looks down at the city, at the tiny figures scrambling, planning, hopping. "I am," he says softly, "because now comes the part where they test my patience." The sky darkens, not with clouds but with intent. And somewhere deep in the city, something old, desperate, and very human prepares to make a choice that can't be undone. The decision is made in a room with no windows. It doesn't look like the birthplace of extinction. Fluorescent lights hum softly overhead. Coffee cups sit half-finished on a long steel table. A digital clock ticks forward with stubborn normalcy, counting seconds in a world that may not have many left. No one says the word nuclear out loud. They don't have to. The men and women gathered here understand what escalation looks like. They've lived their entire careers preparing for it, rehearsing scenarios where the unthinkable becomes procedural. But this time, there's no opposing superpower across an ocean, no ideology to demonize, no red phone ringing in the night. There is only one being in the sky, and the growing certainty that nothing they have can stop him. A general clears his throat. His uniform is immaculate, medals heavy on his chest, but his hands shake just enough to give him away. "We've exhausted conventional options," he says. "Homelander is compromised." No one argues. The footage speaks for itself. The strongest symbol of American supremacy reduced to a bloodied afterthought with a flick of a wrist. A scientist leans forward. "We still don't understand the nature of the entity. His durability appears absolute, but the general presses. But absolute has a way of becoming less so when subjected to enough energy." Silence. Someone swallows, someone else looks away. The scientist continues, voice steadier than his eyes. "A strategic detonation wouldn't be aimed at killing him directly. It would test the upper boundary, force a reaction, if he's capable of being harmed, even slowed." "And if he is?" a woman asks quietly. The scientist hesitates. "Then we will have demonstrated our limits." The clock ticks. Finally, the woman nods once. "Authorize preparation. Hold execution pending confirmation." Across the city, Beerus feels the shift. It's subtle, not the weapon itself, not yet. It's the intent. The way fear condenses into resolve, how desperation sharpens into something dangerous. He opens one eye. "Ah," he murmurs, "so that's the direction you've chosen." Wise floats beside him, staff glowing faintly. "They're afraid." "Yes," Beerus agrees, "but fear doesn't excuse stupidity." Below them, the city feels different now. Streets are emptier. Sirens wail in the distance, not responding to anything specific, just noise in search of purpose. The air hums with tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. Homelander hovers several blocks away, watching Beerus from a distance he would once have considered absurd. His chest still aches where the blow landed. Not physically, those wounds heal, but somewhere deeper. His invincibility is gone. Not literally. He's still stronger than anyone else on this planet, faster, deadlier. But the belief is shattered. For the first time since childhood, Homelander feels small. Vought's voice crackles in his ear. Orders, reassurances, lies dressed up as confidence. "Stand by," they say. "We're working on something." He almost laughs. On a rooftop nearby, unseen, the boys watch the sky. "This is bad," Huey says. "Like end-of-the-world bad." Butcher doesn't respond immediately. His eyes are locked on Beerus, on the way the being floats without effort, without tension, like reality itself is accommodating him. "He's not hunting," Butcher says finally. "He's waiting." "For what?" asks. Butcher exhales. "For us to screw up." As if summoned by the thought, the sky flashes. Not lightning. Something else. High above the clouds, a shape descends, faster than sound, wrapped in fire and purpose. The first of several payloads, released not as an attack but as a probe, a test. Beerus looks up. "So impatient," he sighs. The object detonates midair, far above the city. The explosion is controlled, contained, its energy focused downward like a hammer. The shockwave slams into Beerus. For a fraction of a second, he disappears inside the blast. Sensors spike, readings go wild, every screen in the command room lights up. "Direct hit," someone whispers. The fireball expands, then collapses in on itself, leaving behind a crater in the sky, a wound in the clouds. When the smoke clears, Beerus is still there. This time, his expression has changed. Not anger. Annoyance has curdled into something sharper. He straightens, aura flaring, pressure radiating outward in invisible waves that buckle steel and crack glass miles away. People drop to their knees, gasping, crushed not by force, but by presence. Beerus doesn't raise his voice. But the world listens anyway. That, he says, tone dangerously calm, was your final warning. Wise's smile fades just a little. In the command room, panic erupts. He's powering up. What does that even mean? Energy readings are off the scale. Abort, abort. Too late. Beerus lifts one finger. The sky darkens, not with clouds but with something deeper. The air vibrates. Gravity feels optional. Homelander's heart pounds. His instincts scream at him to run, to hide, to do something, anything. But his body remains frozen, caught between terror and pride. Wait, Homelander shouts, voice cracking across the distance. You said you wanted quiet. Beerus looks at him, eyes glowing faintly. I did. The finger lowers, just a fraction. And now, Beerus continues, you've reminded me why silence is so rare in worlds like this. Energy condenses at his fingertip. Not a beam, not an explosion. A concept. Destruction given form. Wise watches closely. If you release that here. I know, Beerus replies. I'm not aiming at the city. Relief ripples through the observers, until they realize what he is aiming at. Far beyond the skyline, far beyond the horizon, something invisible but vital begins to unravel. Satellites blink out of existence. Communication arrays dissolve. Power grids fail in cascading waves. The modern world screams as its nervous system is severed. No firestorm, no mushroom cloud. Just absence. Lights go out across continents. Planes lose contact. Markets freeze mid-transaction. Civilization stumbles, blind and deaf. Beerus lowers his hand. There, he says softly, now it's quiet. On the ground, people stare at dead phones, dark screens. A sudden, primal fear setting in as they realize how fragile everything they built really was. In the hideout, Huey looks around. Did the power just go out everywhere? checks a handheld radio. Static, nothing else. Butcher's face hardens. He didn't kill us, Butcher says. He warned us. Above the city, Homelander floats alone, surrounded by a silence that feels heavier than any explosion. Beerus turns his back on him. For the next little while, the destroyer says, I will be watching. He glances back once, eyes locking onto Homelander with unsettling clarity. And if you force my hand again, he adds, there won't be a system left to cripple, only ash. Beerus and Wise vanish, not in a flash, but in a distortion like reality itself politely stepping aside. The sky returns to normal. But nothing else does. In the sudden, global darkness, humanity realizes something terrifying. The God didn't come to conquer them. He came to judge them. And the verdict hasn't been delivered yet. The darkness doesn't arrive all at once. It rolls in unevenly, like a tide pulling power out of the world in patches, leaving behind confusion where certainty used to live. In some cities, lights flicker before dying. In others, they simply vanish, cutting conversations mid-sentence, trapping elevators between floors, freezing operating rooms in stunned silence. Air traffic control screens go black. Satellites fail to respond. Stock exchanges lock in place, numbers suspended forever at the moment before collapse. It takes less than 5 minutes for the planet to understand what just happened. It takes much longer to understand why. In the command room, panic mutates into something uglier than fear. Rage, desperation, blame. Bring systems back online. We can't, they're gone, not offline, gone. Gone how? The technician swallows, as in erased, like they were never there. The general sinks into his chair, the weight of decades of preparation collapsing into irrelevance. Nuclear deterrence, missile shields, black sites. None of it mattered against a being who didn't even bother to attack them directly. They weren't enemies to him. They were noise. Somewhere in the building, someone starts praying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet whisper to a god they're suddenly unsure is listening. Across the city, Homelander lands on the rooftop where the boys are hiding. They don't notice him at first. No sonic boom, no dramatic entrance, just boots touching concrete. Butcher turns slowly, instinct already screaming. "Come to finish the job?" he asks. Homelander doesn't look at him. He's staring at the skyline, at the darkened city stretching out like a corpse. No glow, no pulse, just blackness and scattered fires where generators failed. "I didn't do this," Homelander says. It sounds like a confession. Huey laughs nervously. "Yeah, try telling that to literally everyone." Homelander finally turns, eyes hollow. "You think I wanted this?" Steps forward, cautious. "You didn't stop it." "That thing," Homelander snaps, voice cracking. "That thing didn't even see me as a threat." Silence settles between them, thick and uncomfortable. For the first time since they met him, the boys don't see a god or a monster. They see a man who just realized he's neither. "I spent my whole life being told I was the top of the food chain," Homelander continues. "That everything out there was smaller than me, weaker, temporary." He laughs again, bitter this time. "Turns out I was just local." Butcher studies him carefully. He's waited years for this moment, for Homelander to break, to finally feel what everyone else feels around him. And yet there's no satisfaction in it. "Welcome to the club," Butcher mutters. "Now you know how the rest of us feel." Homelander's jaw tightens. "If he comes back." "When?" Butcher corrects. Homelander nods once. "When he comes back, what happens then?" No one answers. Because no one knows. Elsewhere in a space that doesn't obey distance or direction, Beerus reclines on an invisible surface, eyes half-lidded. The universe hums quietly around him, the absence of human technology creating a stillness he hasn't felt in a long time. Wise floats nearby, staff resting lightly against the void. "You didn't destroy them," Wise says. Beerus snorts. "Don't mistake restraint for mercy." Still, Wise replies gently, "You could have erased the planet." Beerus's tail flicks. "And accomplished what? Destruction is easy, meaning takes effort." He closes his eyes fully. "This world fascinates me." Wise tilts his head. "Because of their heroes." Beerus considers it. "Because of their lies." He opens one eye again, gazing toward Earth. They built gods out of marketing and fear. They handed power to children and called it order. Then they acted surprised when it rotted. Wise smiles faintly. "And now?" "Now," Beerus says, "they're afraid of a god who doesn't need their worship." Back on Earth, riots begin. Without communication, without authority, without the illusion of control, humanity does what it always does when the scaffolding collapses. Some people help each other. Others take what they can. Armed groups form overnight. Old grudges resurface. Vought Tower stands dark, its logo unlit for the first time in decades. Inside, executives scramble with flashlights and battery-powered radios, clinging to fragments of influence that mean nothing without a system to amplify them. "This is temporary," one of them insists. "We'll spin this, we always do." But deep down, they know the truth. There's nothing to spin when the god doesn't care about your narrative. On the streets, rumors spread faster than facts ever did. Some say the blackout is punishment. Others call it the end times. A few whisper the name Beerus like a curse or a prayer. And somewhere in the middle of it all, no, not here. No cavalry is coming, no multiversal saviors. Just broken people in a broken world, suddenly aware they're not the apex species anymore. On the rooftop, Butcher lights a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his scarred face. "So," he says, exhaling, What do you reckon he wants? Homelander stares at the dark horizon. Judgment. And what happens if we fail? Huey asks. Homelander doesn't answer right away. When he does, his voice is barely above a whisper. Then he doesn't turn the lights back on. High above, beyond sight and sound, Beerus watches the chaos unfold with quiet interest. He isn't angry anymore. He's curious. And curiosity in a destroyer god is far more dangerous. Morning doesn't arrive so much as it hesitates. The sun rises technically, the sky lightens, shadows retreat, but the world underneath remains muted, stripped of the rhythm that once defined it. No morning alarms, no traffic hum, no screens blinking awake with curated urgency. Just people stepping out of their homes into a silence that feels intentional, like the universe is watching to see what they'll do next. Emergency generators cough to life in fragments. Hospitals ration power. Military bases switch to analog systems they haven't trusted in decades. The modern world, built on invisible currents and constant motion, now feels like a museum exhibit held together by extension cords and memory. And everywhere, the same question spreads without needing words. Was that a warning or a test? At a temporary command center set up inside a repurposed sports arena, leaders argue in hushed, frantic circles. Generals, politicians, intelligence directors, people who once believed themselves indispensable. We need to make contact. With what? Him? Yes. How? No one answers that. Because the truth is uncomfortable, Beerus never announced himself, never issued demands, never established terms. He simply acted and the world rearranged itself around the consequences. That's what terrifies them most. There's no negotiation strategy for a being who doesn't care if you agree. In a quieter corner of the city, Annie January, Starlight, helps distribute bottled water from the back of an abandoned delivery truck. No costume, no camera, just a woman handing supplies to strangers who no longer know who to trust. A child looks up at her. Are the heroes gonna fix it? Annie hesitates. She's answered that question her whole life with confidence she didn't earn, with scripts, with slogans, with faith in systems that promised salvation as long as everyone smiled on cue. I don't know, she says honestly, but we're still here, that counts for something. The child nods, accepting the answer with more grace than most adults. Across town, Homelander watches similar scenes unfold from a rooftop, cape fluttering uselessly in the wind. No cheers rise when people see him now. No phones lift to capture his silhouette. Some people look away. Others glare. A few shout. You didn't save us. You let it happen. You're supposed to be God. Each word lands harder than any punch Beerus could have thrown. For the first time, Homelander can't burn the criticism away with heat vision, can't intimidate it into silence. He feels it sink in, heavy and corrosive. Maybe they're right. Maybe he was never meant to be more than a symbol, and symbols don't survive contact with the real thing. Inside an underground bunker, Butcher pores over old files by lantern light, notes on SUPs, on Vought experiments, on contingency plans that now feel laughably small. Watches him. You're thinking something stupid. Butcher doesn't look up. Always am. You're thinking about poking the god. Not poking, Butcher says, understanding. Snorts. Mate, that thing snapped the planet's spine without lifting a finger. What exactly are you planning to understand? Butcher finally meets his gaze. What makes him bored? That earned silence. He didn't wipe us out, Butcher continues. Didn't glass the place. Didn't even kill that many people directly. He took something from us instead. The power grid, Huey says quietly. No, Butcher replies, control. The room stills. He took the thing we hide behind, Butcher says. The systems, the tech, the illusion that we're in charge, and now he's watching what crawls out when it's gone. Above them, in the thin veil between universes, Beerus lounges again, tail swaying slowly. He observes not with malice but with clinical interest. Cities adapting, humans organizing without screens, violence flaring, then receding in pockets where cooperation wins out. They're resilient, Wise notes. They always are, Beerus replies, until they are. Wise peers into the flow of time. You sense it too, don't you? Something changing. Beerus nods. Power reacts to pressure, always has. His gaze lingers on Homelander, on Annie, on Butcher, on millions of ordinary humans choosing, minute by minute, whether to become better or worse without a system telling them who to be. This world might surprise me, Beerus says. And if it disappoints you, Wise asks. Beerus smiles faintly. Then I'll finish my meal. Down below, the first official message appears, broadcast over every remaining radio frequency, hand-cranked and battery-powered alike. A single voice, shaky but determined. We don't know what's happening. We don't know who's responsible, but we are still here. Help each other. Stay calm. This isn't the end. People listen. Some believe it. Some don't. And far above, Beerus closes his eyes, sensing something new forming in the cracks he created. Hope. Fragile, dangerous. Potentially interesting. Hope doesn't spread like fire. Fire is easy. Fire feeds on panic, on anger, on the instinct to survive at someone else's expense. Hope is slower. It moves hand to hand, word to word, in decisions so small they almost feel meaningless until you realize how many of them are happening at once. In neighborhoods where looting should have taken over, people set up shared kitchens. In places where gangs once ruled, patrols form not to dominate but to warn. Candles burn in windows not as symbols of mourning but as signals. Someone is awake here. Someone will answer if you knock. Beerus notices all of it. He notices the places where humanity fails too, the riots that spiral into massacres, the warlords who rise overnight, the strong who decide the end of the world is permission rather than responsibility. He watches them with equal attention, weighing the balance with an indifference that feels almost merciful. Judgment is rarely clean, Wise remarks. It isn't meant to be, Beerus replies. Clean things break too easily. On Earth, Vought makes its move. With their digital empire in ruins, they fall back on something older, louder. Convoys of armored vehicles roll through darkened streets, loudspeakers blaring reassurances backed by armed escorts. They offer food, protection, order, all at a price. Homelander stands at the head of it, reluctantly at first, then with practiced confidence creeping back into his posture. The cape goes on. The smile returns. For a moment it works. People cheer again, not because they believe, but because fear needs something familiar to cling to. From the shadows, Annie watches the spectacle with growing unease. This isn't help, she mutters. It's branding. Butcher sees it too, and his jaw tightens. Vought, trying to prove to the god that they're useful. Useful how? Huey asks. By pretending they still run the show. High above, Beerus tilts his head as the convoys move. Interesting strategy. Wise raises an eyebrow. You disapprove. I'm amused, Beerus says. They mistake attention for approval. In one city square, Homelander addresses a crowd lit by floodlights and flanked by soldiers. His voice booms, confident, reassuring. We will rebuild. We will restore what was taken. You are not alone. The words echo. So does something else. A pressure, subtle at first, then undeniable. Beerus appears in the sky without spectacle, floating as casually as a thought. The floodlights flicker. The air grows heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. The crowd freezes. Homelander's voice dies in his throat. Beerus looks down at him, not angry, not impressed. Still playing king? Beerus asks mildly. Homelander swallows. They need stability. They need truth, Beerus replies, and you've never been good at that. The god glances at the soldiers, at the executives watching from armored transports, at the cameras desperately trying to record something they can't even power properly. You mistake my patience for endorsement, Beerus continues. I was curious what you would do when stripped of your toys. His gaze hardens. This is disappointing. With a flick of his finger, the armored vehicles vanish. Not explode, not crumble, simply erased, leaving perfect circular impressions in the pavement where they once stood. Screams erupt, panic surges. Beerus raises a hand, and the sound cuts off like a switch being flipped. Order imposed through lies is still chaos, he says, and chaos without purpose is waste. He looks at Homelander one last time. You are not their protector, you are their crutch. The god disappears. Silence rushes back in. Homelander stands shaking, eyes wide, something inside him finally cracking all the way through. Later, in a half-lit church converted into a shelter, Butcher listens as stories pour in. Of Beerus stopping atrocities, of Beerus ignoring prayers, of Beerus dismantling power structures with surgical precision. He's not saving us, Huey says quietly. He's pruning. Butcher nods, like a gardener. And what happens to the weeds? MM asks. Butcher exhales. That depends on whether we're useful. Above them, Beerus watches the ripples spread from his intervention. Vought's grip loosens. Grassroots leadership strengthens. Humanity stumbles forward without its manufactured gods. You're changing them, Wise says. Beerus's eyes narrow slightly. No, I'm giving them room to change themselves. He senses it then, a shift, something subtle but undeniable, a presence moving at the edges of his awareness, not hostile, not benevolent. Curious. Ah, Beerus murmurs, there it is. Wise straightens, what is? Beerus smiles slowly, the consequence. Far away, something ancient stirs in response to a universe being nudged out of its comfortable despair. Something that has always thrived on imbalance, now sensing a threat not of power, but of direction. Beerus leans forward, intrigued. So, he says softly, this world fights back after all. The game just changed. The first sign isn't violence. That's what unsettles Beerus most. Violence is loud, predictable. It announces itself with screams, ruptures, desperate motion. What he feels instead is a pressure, slow and deliberate, like the universe drawing a careful breath. It begins in places no one watches. In abandoned offices where Vought servers once hummed, screens flicker back to life without power. In ruined churches where prayers have gone unanswered for decades, whispers return, not divine, not comforting, but organized. In the minds of men and women who have never believed in anything except survival, a new certainty takes root. Not hope. Purpose. Beerus senses it as a distortion in causality, a tightening of probability. Events begin to align too cleanly. Riots disperse seconds before escalation. Weapons jam at exactly the wrong moment. Leaders with genuine goodwill are removed not by assassination, but by scandal, mistrust, quiet betrayal. This isn't random, Wise says softly. No, Beerus agrees, it's curated. They observe a city where order has begun to stabilize. Community councils replace corporate authority. Food distribution works. Violence drops. For the first time since Beerus arrived, humanity appears to be finding a fragile equilibrium. Then it collapses. Not from chaos, but from coordination. A charismatic figure rises, unconnected to Vought, untouched by soup culture. He speaks calmly, logically. He doesn't promise salvation. He promises efficiency, safety without gods, control without cruelty. People listen. Interesting, Beerus murmurs. They've found a replacement narrative. Wise frowns, but who's writing it? The answer comes in pieces. Billy Butcher finds it first in the worst possible way. A safe house burns, not violently, not dramatically, but cleanly. No explosion, no firefight, just fire spreading with surgical intent. Inside, evidence of meetings that never happened, plans no one remembers making. It's like someone edited us out, Huey whispers, staring at the ashes. Shakes his head. No, they edited around us. Annie feels it too. Her contacts vanish. Allies stop returning messages, not out of fear but because they've been convinced she's the problem. You feel that? She asks Kimiko. Kimiko nods slowly, signing with unsteady hands. Frenchie swallows as he translates. She says, "It feels like being watched by something that already knows what you'll do." High above, Beerus finally sees it clearly. Not a being. A system. An emergent intelligence born from belief, fear, data, and necessity. Not worshipped like a god. Not feared like a monster. Accepted because it works. This world has always needed control, Beerus says. Now it's building one that doesn't bleed. Wise's expression darkens. A god made of consensus. Beerus's tail flicks with interest. Those are always the most dangerous. The system, whatever it is, adjusts. It stops opposing Beerus directly. Instead, it reframes him. News spreads that the purple god is a destabilizing influence, a force of arbitrary destruction, a threat to long-term survival. No lies are told. Only context is changed. Humans begin to look at the sky with something new. Not fear. Calculation. For the first time since arriving, Beerus feels something push back, not against his power, but against his relevance. They're adapting, Wise says. Beerus smiles thinly. Good. Below, Homelander sits alone in a dark room, screens showing a world that no longer needs him. A message plays on loop, calm, measured, damning. Sups are inefficient, gods are unstable, the future belongs to systems. Homelander laughs once, then stops. Am I obsolete? He whispers. Across the planet, Butcher realizes the truth at the same moment Beerus does. This thing, he growls, it doesn't want gods. Annie looks up sharply. Then why hasn't it come for Beerus? Butcher meets her eyes. Because it's waiting to prove he's unnecessary. In the silence between stars, Beerus folds his arms. A universe that tries to outgrow destruction, he says slowly, must be very sure it no longer needs me. Wise tilts his head, and if it's wrong? Beerus's eyes narrow, curiosity giving way to something heavier. Then, he says, it will learn why gods of destruction exist. Somewhere deep in the architecture of reality, the system makes its next move. And for the first time, Beerus is no longer certain he's the one setting the rules. The system does not announce itself. It never needed to. By the time Beerus realizes the full scope of what has been built, it is already everywhere, not as a voice, not as a face, but as an assumption. A shared understanding that slips into conversations, policies, habits. The quiet belief that chaos can be managed, that power can be audited, that gods are inefficiencies. Cities begin to hum with a new rhythm. Not hopeful, not joyful. Efficient. Crime drops further. Hunger becomes rare. Conflict is resolved before it ignites. People stop looking up at the sky because nothing ever falls from it anymore. And Beerus is left waiting. For the first time in eons, no one fears him. They don't worship him either. They account for him. It's adjusting probability fields to avoid you, Wise says, watching timelines branch and collapse in elegant, bloodless patterns. Disasters redirect. Wars de-escalate. You are being deprioritized. Beerus bares his teeth in something that might be a grin. So it thinks if it behaves well enough, I'll get bored. Wise hesitates. Would you? Beerus doesn't answer. Below them, Billy Butcher walks through a city that finally looks like it might survive. Children play, markets function, no capes, no sirens, no gods. And that terrifies him. "This isn't right," he mutters. "Nothing this clean comes free." Annie feels it too. The wrongness isn't in what's happening, but in what isn't. No room for failure, no space for rebellion, no allowance for human contradiction. "They don't need heroes anymore," she says quietly. Shakes his head. "No, they need compliance." The system reveals itself at last, not as a being, but as a decision made everywhere at once. A broadcast plays across the world, calm, neutral, almost kind. The age of gods is unsustainable. Destruction is an outdated function. Stability has surpassed it. Beerus watches, tail slowly swaying. "Ah," he says, "there it is." The message continues. God of destruction Beerus has a projected risk index incompatible with long-term survival. Containment protocols are recommended. The sky does not darken. No armies rise. Instead, the universe subtly tightens. Space grows heavier around Beerus, not enough to trap him, just enough to resist. Probability bends to avoid his impulses. Every action he considers branches into outcomes where intervention arrives early or consequences ripple outward in ways that harm innocence. The system isn't trying to kill him. It's trying to make him responsible. Wise's eyes widen. It's forcing moral weight onto your actions. Beerus goes very still. "That," he says softly, "is unforgivable." He descends. Not in fury. In clarity. He appears in the heart of the system's physical infrastructure. Not a throne, not a core, but a vast lattice of servers, human minds, and predictive models woven together. The architects stand frozen as Beerus steps among them, purple skin glowing faintly in the artificial light. "You built a god," Beerus says, "one that thinks it can replace me." A spokesperson steps forward, trembling but resolute. "We didn't replace you, we optimized beyond you." Beerus nods, a common mistake. He raises one finger. For a moment, nothing happens. Then Beerus hesitates. He sees it all, the progress, the lives saved, the suffering prevented. A universe that might finally function without annihilation lurking in the background. Wise watches silently. The system waits. Beerus lowers his hand. The architects gasp. Then he smiles. "I'm not here to destroy you," he says. "I'm here to remind you why destruction exists." He snaps his fingers, not to erase but to introduce uncertainty, a fracture in prediction, a gap where choice can exist again. The system stutters. Beerus turns away. A universe without gods becomes rigid. A universe without destruction becomes brittle. As he rises back into the sky, Wise joins him. "So you let it live," Wise says. Beerus exhales slowly. "I corrected it." Below, humanity feels the change immediately. The world doesn't collapse, but it breathes again. Mistakes return, struggle returns, growth resumes. And somewhere deep in the system's code, a new line appears. Unpredictability accepted. Homelander, watching from exile, finally understands. Power was never about dominance. It was about restraint. Beerus looks out over the planet one last time. "This universe will survive," he says, "not because it eliminated gods, but because it learned not to become one." Wise smiles. The god of destruction turns away, leaving behind a world no longer ruled by fear, nor by false perfection. Only by fragile human choice.